Goldilocks and the niching strategy. A nighttime story for recruiters. Let me explain how it works. First thing to decide is the overall sector that you're working within, the generalized definition of the niche. Now, let me explain one of the most common mistakes that people make. They'll say that they work in insurance. Insurance is not a niche. Insurance is an industry. They'll say they work with salespeople. Salespeople are not a niche. Salespeople is a description of a general classification of the population. It's too big. You can't call that a niche. It's just an industry. So let me work with myself as an example. When I set up my own search firm in 2008, right at the height of the financial crisis, the niche that we first of all started with was insurance. It's too big. It includes all sorts of people. It includes corporate insurance brokers, commercial insurance brokers, insurers, underwriters, reinsurers. It's a massive, massive industry. So what I did was to look at it and go, okay, well, how does it break down? It breaks down into these segments. Which of those segments is least exposed to market fluctuation? Well, commercial insurance brokers seems a pretty stable market, even in the height of that financial crisis, because even if large corporates laid off a lot of people in redundancies, a lot of those people that were made redundant would then go off and set up their own firms, who would in turn need commercial insurance brokers, SME insurance. Okay, so that small niche of the much bigger industry, well, that kind of makes sense. Well, no, it doesn't, because that individual sector still included dozens of job categories and tens of thousands, actually hundreds of thousands of people. So it's too big. So, okay, how can I niche that down? What's relevant to my experience? What's likely to be stable in the long run? And what we came up with was account executives for commercial insurance brokers, because account executives in another industry, they'd be called salespeople or account managers. They're always in demand. If you're in commercial insurance broking and you can bring money, business to the table, you're always going to be in demand. So commercial brokers and account executives. And that was what we focused on. So the first part of the Goldilocks strategy is basically deciding what kind of breakfast do you want. Do you want cereal? Do you want porridge? Do you want fried eggs, poached eggs, toast, orange juice? What do you want? What kind of breakfast do you want? And that's really defining, in broad terms, your niche. And then you can go on to the preparation of the breakfast. Now, the first stage of the strategy, deciding what kind of breakfast you fancy, that's more art than science. The second stage is the maths bit. So here's how it works. The first stage is to look at the total population. How many candidates are there in that area that you've identified, in that niche? And in our case, it was about 5,000 candidates. Well, I don't know whether that sounds like a lot or little to you, but that's how many there were. Okay, second stage, how often do they change jobs? And in that market, it's once every 4 years, because they're a slightly more dynamic part of a very conservative industry. So 5,000 divided by 4 gives you 1,250 potential placements each year. Okay, well, where does that leave me in relative to the competition? Well, if I follow through on my market dominance strategy and I can win 10% of that market, how many placements does that give me? Well, 1,250 divided by 10, 125 placements a year. Okay, that sounds like a lot. Let's do the rest of the maths. What's the average salary multiplied by the average fee I'm going to get? What does that give me? And it came out back in 2008, because I was able to put together a profoundly good business case, I was achieving 20% on an average of 40% salaries, so £8,000 a placement. 8,000 times 125 placements, 1 million a year. Not very much, but it will keep me and mine in porridge for a while. So, okay, if I can achieve market dominance, that level of income is what I'm looking for. Now, that's basically 2 and a little bit placements a week. Is that doable? Well, as long as I get the process right. Yeah, absolutely. I can do a couple of placements a week. That's not beyond the bounds of reality. I'll probably need some support, but yeah, that's an achievable number. And that's fundamentally how the niching process works. What's the total universe of candidates? Divide it by the number of times they move. Divide that by 10% to give you a market dominant position. Multiply that by the average fee. That tells you whether it will deliver your income goal. Because at the end of the day, we're all in this to deliver a certain amount of revenue and porridge to the table. So that's how the maths work. Now, hang on. If I achieve 10%, I've got market dominance, Stephen. What comes from that? Well, there's 2 ways of looking at it. Because I was building my own firm, I followed path 1. And path 1 was, okay, I've got 10%. Now let's see what the rest of the firm can do. So we brought in colleagues who were then developing their own market. And at the point at which our firm had achieved 30% of the market, 30% of the potential placements each year, which it took a bit of doing. It took us 3 years to get to that point. And it was a rigidly disciplined, it was ruthlessly executed to get to that level. But at 30% of any market, you've pretty much maxed out in practical terms. You're running out of candidates, you're running out of clients to market those candidates to. It's just diminishing returns kick in. But what we then did, and we could have done this when I got 10% personally, we chose to do it once the firm was at 30% of the market. You can then expand your niche. You should try and do it so you've got the overlap in the Venn diagram. So we didn't go from account executives in commercial insurance brokers. We didn't then go to car sales because that's what we did was expand into brokers and underwriters and go from commercial insurance brokers to corporate brokers, and we just worked within those overlapping circles so that each time we expanded into a new market, there was a rationale, there was expertise that we could take from one place to the other. And that is how you can sit there at the dining table with your bowl of your favourite porridge in front of you and know that it's not too big, it's not too small, it's just right for you and the rest of your business family. If you've got any questions about it, drop me a note in the comments below, or alternatively DM me through Instagram or Facebook, and I will happily reply to any and all questions you want to throw at me. And I'll see you again next time.